Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to our free adoption orientation with Pact and Adoption Alliance. Today is October 17th, 2024. My name is Katie Winan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am Pact's adoption social worker and LGBTQ advocate. I have been with Pact since May 2013, and I have worked with several families over those 11 and a half years. For tonight's orientation, this is being recorded. There will be moments throughout to pause and ask or stop for questions. Feel free to drop it into the chat. You can also unmute yourself if you feel like you want to, and there are questions there. The flow of this orientation is going to start with, hey, we're coming to adoption. Like, what should we do? What should we think about? And then I'm going to flip into why Pact specifically, but we'll be doing some general information at the start of this orientation. So who is Pact? We are not an all capital letter organization. It is capital P, lowercase ACT, Pact and Adoption Alliance. We are a nonprofit, full service adoption agency licensed in the state of California. We provide domestic infant adoption services that are child-centered, anti-racist, and ethical. We work to decenter whiteness in adoption. We focus on same-race placements with families of color. We offer transracial adoption education programming for white families looking to adopt or already parenting across race. And we offer extensive post-placement services, which is a baby has been placed and adoption has moved forward and been finalized, and we are still around because adoption is a lifelong journey. It does not end with placement. We do not dip out once a family has a baby. We are here with a therapy program. We are here with a family camp. We are here with education. Some of our programs are on the screen. We have our Adoptive Parents of Color Collaborative, which is all for foster and adoptive parents of color. We have a First Birth Family Circle support group. I lead the Adult Adoptees of Color support group. We have educational programs, community happenings, our family camp, trainings, webinars every month. We offer consultations for families that maybe adopted from us and now the kid is 12 and new things are popping up, right? So we offer extensive post-placement support, education programs, and community. Not very common with other adoption agencies across the country. As mentioned, we focus and prioritize same-race adoptions. Same-race adoption in PACT's program is one or both adoptive parents shares the race of the baby. Our placements are about 98% same-race placements. We believe same-race serve children best. That is our child-centered focus and approach. They don't force the child to always have their adoptive status in the public eye, and the child is raised with parents who know and understand the BIPOC experience, what it means to be a person of color in today's world and society, and so forth. Same-race adoptions do not fix the trauma of adoption. I take calls and emails from too many parents who say, oh, well, we're Black and the baby's going to be Black, so they'll be fine. No, there's still complexities. It does not fix the inherent trauma of adoption and family separation. And our stance on it does not force the child to always have their adoptive status in the public eye. I myself was adopted as a baby. My parents are both white. I am clearly not. My adoption has been public knowledge since the moment my parents put me in their arms, right? So I've never been able to hide from it. I've never been able to get a break from it. I've had to deal with questions all 42 years of my life. For kids in same race placements, people don't think twice. So they're still navigating family separation, attachment, anxiety, loss, ambiguous grief. They're navigating open adoption, right? They're still dealing with that, but they don't have people just stopping them in the middle of the street saying, where did you get your kid from? Unless it's obvious or evident, which can also happen in same race placements. Transracial or interracial adoptions, most of them involve white adoptive parents adopting children of color. Families adopting across racial lines need the additional awareness, education, and support, and that is where PACT can help. We believe transracial placements can work when parents learn to address their privilege and are actively working to be anti-racist and do not live in predominantly white areas. PACT is not currently working with any white families. I haven't had a white prospective adoptive family in my program for several years. The main reason being there's a high chance white families will not be chosen through our placement program. These are families with two or one white parent, like a single white parent coming to adopt. The pregnant people we are supporting are contacting us to avoid transracial placements, so they're not interested in considering white families either. If there are any white families on this call or watching this orientation later thinking, well, who do I work with? Literally any other adoption agency in the country. Pact is probably one of the only that prioritizes and focuses on supporting prospective adoptive parents of color. You can come to us for education and awareness and training, but placement is not very likely with white families in our program. And we are not interested in taking time, money, and emotional energy from families that we know are going to have a harder time in our placement program. As you're choosing your agency or your professional, you want to start with an information session, consultation, orientation, something like this to get to know one another better. You want to choose the agency or professional that meets your goals and needs in the adoption process. How will they work with you? It's it's very direct contact. They do your home study, they look at your health records, they check your fingerprints, your employer sends them information, right? It's very personal work that you're doing with strangers, if you think about it. So ensuring that you have found the person that feels right to you, the agency that feels right to you. Ask how they support and work with expectant parents. What is their stance on family preservation? For me, as an adoptee myself, an immediate pink flag is when an organization calls people birth parents or birth mother, um, doesn't address how they address or support family preservation, right? Like they're only into it to do family separation. If you wanted to break it down out of really specific adoption terms, there are agencies in this country that are relying on family separation to keep their doors open. Pact is not doing that. We do not rely on adoption placements to function as an organization. You heard everything that we offer. That is a lot of where our income comes through. So any agency that you connect with or talk with, ask, how do you support the pregnant people and the expectant parents? If they say, oh, well, we support our birth mothers, one, they're Xing out 50% of a child's parent by a birth father, saying our birth mothers, they don't owe possession on somebody. And a birth parent is not a birth parent until they sign paperwork. It's just somebody who's pregnant, considering their options, interested in what way they could possibly go with their unplanned pregnancy. Ask about adoption costs and fees. Ask about everything. This is italicized because over the years, I have taken too many phone calls from people who say, oh, I'm working with this agency and they told me it was going to cost this amount. And then all of a sudden they dropped an extra $8,000 to $13,000 on my plate. And I have a kid and I want a kid and I want it to be a parent. So I'm going to pay this money, right? You want to ask about everything. Is there an escrow, mileage, extra time, paperwork signing, expectant parent living expenses, stuff like that. I will talk about Pact's fees and expectations later on in this orientation. What post-placement support and services are available to birth parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents? I've taken too many phone calls from families of mine that, and I'll explain this further, that I have families that work with Pact and concurrently work with another agency. Pretty much every family of mine that found their adoption placement through a different agency has called me at some point to say, our child's birth parent is struggling. What can you do? How can you help? And I always have to say, I mean, I can connect them with my birth parent coordinator, but they place through a different agency. I don't have their contact info. You need to call your agency back to see what support they can give. 98% of the time, my families tell me my agency can't do anything. They said the adoption's over. Ask about post-placement support and how they're going to treat a birth parent who calls struggling at 9 months post-placement or even 10 years post-placement. Education requirements. Ask what they have for education requirements, especially transracial adoption education. There are agencies that use a 30-minute video to tell white parents that they can adopt a Black child, or they do like a half-day training and say, you're approved to adopt a Black, Brown, Latinx, multiracial child of color. Pact's transracial adoption education is a 6-month or longer process. Do I still think it's enough? No. And it's way more than any other agency is asking of their prospective adoptive families, especially those considering transracial placement, which is still a large number. Adoption misconceptions. So at Pact, we are an organization that is run by an adoptive parent, an adoptee, a birth parent, and other adoptees and members of the constellation. We have lived this personally and professionally. And over the years, with all of the families I work with, the adoptees I have supported, These are common misconceptions that we feel like they want people to know. That comment, oh, you're going to adopt, that's so great. So many children need homes. That is accurate with foster care. That is not accurate with private infant adoption, which is what Pact does. If you're a family who's like, oh, well, we really want to help kids, I've been told so many kids need homes, they need permanency, that's the foster care system. That's where the real need is. We encourage and support you to go there. The goal of foster care is reunification, so it can be challenging. And if you are like, I want to provide a home for a child, um, temporarily even, or permanently. Some foster placements turn into permanent adoption placements. But the so many children need homes quote is not accurate to private infant placement. It is foster care, where there are over 400,000 kids in need of permanency. Um, you struggled with infertility, and then one of your friends was like, oh, you know what? Just adopt. It's not just adopt. You are not entitled to somebody else's child because you are not able to conceive one of your own or because you don't want to add to the human population. Um, just adopt is a long, extensive process. It is lifelong. A child is losing an entire family, ancestors, and history to join your family. So it's not, hey, just do it. It's layered, complex, and lifelong. Love will be enough, not accurate. You to be a parent, yes, you need to have love and structure and support. And you also need to be able to navigate the layers that come with adoption, the ambiguous loss, the severed tie, the primal wound. That is a book that a lot of adoptees refer to as the adoptee Bible. Um, Love will not be enough. I know plenty of people that are like, oh, yeah, my parents love me to death. And it was not enough. I struggled. This was not met. This need was not met. They didn't know anything about the trauma of adoption. They didn't process their infertility, and I felt it my entire life. Like the stuff I've heard adoptees share is what obviously definitely guides this process for me. Infant placement decreases the trauma impacts. I have a lot of people who say, oh, I don't want to go to foster care because they're going to have all those issues. They're older kids. Um, Even if a baby comes out of the birth canal and immediately into your arms, that little body just lost everything they've known for the last 7 to 9 months and is thrown into a world where they don't look like you. Maybe they have the same skin tone, which was not my experience. But they don't look like you. The sounds, the sights, the smells, the vibrations, the everything they felt for 9 months was yanked out from underneath them and they had no control over it. That stays in our bodies for life. Adoptees are at a higher risk for ADHD, suicidality, substance abuse, mental health things, especially if like if the trauma of adoption is not noted. Some same race families are like, oh, well, we'll tell them when we're older because we look alike, so nobody will know. Extremely detrimental and dangerous. Um, so infant placement. Oh, we want a baby. They're a clean scratch. They are not a clean scratch. They're a clean slate. They are not a clean slate. They are already hardwired. You just have the honor to watch them grow up. And they went through a significant severing, significant trauma, a significant loss. They are not verbal yet, but it stays in the bodies. So it does not, baby infant placement does not decrease the trauma impact. As I mentioned, same race placement does not decrease the trauma impact either. Although the child may look like you and match, they are still navigating all the steps that I just said. Ambiguous, right? Like everything, they are still navigating that. It's just a little bit easier to look like your parents and not always have to answer those questions. All babies are drug exposed. That's not accurate. I have done plenty of adoption placements where the birth mother did not use anything, or birth parent or birth giving person did not use any sort of drug or alcohol or anything like that. So while they are still a high percentage and it's likely to happen, remember there are not really people in the world that are like, hey, let me get pregnant and give my kid to somebody else. No, people are living their life, doing their lifestyle, find out they're pregnant. It's not planned. Then they have to think about their options. All babies are not drug exposed. There are some that have had absolutely nothing in their system. Broken adoptions. I have a lot of people who call me, and I'm not in this position. I don't know what it totally feels like, but at Pact, we call it a broken match. A broken adoption is when something was fully legally finalized, went to court, had your adoption finalization, and then something came around to break it up, and the child was reunified with family. Um, If you're waiting and you're matched with somebody who's 7 months, 8 months pregnant, and then they decide that they want to parent their child, it's a broken match. It's a placement that didn't move forward. Family preservation occurred. It's not a broken adoption. There was no paperwork. They never became a birth parent. They gave birth and realized, yeah, wow, I can't really do this. I'm going to parent my child. Um, it's not a broken adoption. It's a broken match or a placement that did not move forward, or family preservation occurred and we were not able to parent that child. And adoption is a beautiful thing. It can be. The narrative out there is like, oh, sunshine and rainbows and all the happiness. And at Pact, we also acknowledge the real tough parts about it. The loss, the trauma, the navigating open adoption, if that's there, the searching, if an adoption is closed, um, navigating becoming a teen, becoming a young adult, becoming 35 and having your own child by birth. I'm supporting a bunch of adoptees right now who are parents and they're parenting their child. And they're like, nobody prepared us for what it means to be an adoptee and then have a child and parent them. Um, Adoption can be beautiful and it's also complex and it's a trauma, and that should not be ignored. So, why PACT? Why should we go to the agency that some people have said we talk about race too much. Some people have said we talk about the negative stuff too much. Some people are like, well, we want the positive stories. You can get that anywhere. You can go to any agency and they're going to shower you with the positive, but are they going to tell you the truth about what this process can look like? And I would like to say, since I help run the agency here, we aim to be open, honest, transparent, let you know this is not an easy process. So why us? We serve adopted children of color by providing not only adoptive placement, but lifelong education, support, and community for adoptees and their families, both birth and adoptive, on matters of adoption and race. Children are always at the center of our work. We literally sit in our meetings and say, okay, can we pause and just take a child-centered approach? What is the best approach for this kid? Right? The child is at the center of our work. That is who we have to respond to in 28 years when they call us to ask about their adoption, or maybe even 15 years when they call us to ask about their adoption. Ethics, transparency, and honesty are always at the forefront of our work and our approach. Our placement team is comprised of a first parent, adoptees, and an adoptive parent. So we have copious years of lived experience and many, many years of professional experience as well. We address the intersections of race and adoption and how they impact each other and what it looks like. We have a strong emphasis on preparing families for adoption and supporting families after adoption. We offer real options counseling. We'll talk about that more. Love is not enough. And we are aware that we are not for everybody. PACT is not for everyone, and that is okay. I have had families that have done my pre-placement. I send them a follow-up. I hear back from them, and they're like, yeah, we're going with somebody else. Or we want to look in the foster care system. I've had several people come back and be like, wow, yeah, I doing your orientation, doing your consult, doing more education and awareness, I realize I want to give my time and energy to the foster care system where there's a real need. That's great. We are here for you if and when you do adopt, whether it was through us or not. We have most of our population post placement are families who did not adopt through PACT. They just found us. Their agencies don't offer anything, but they come to us for education, support, camp, training, support groups, stuff like that. But we are not for everybody, and that is okay. That's why you want to do these calls, these trainings. You want to get all the info before you make this really important decision. We focus on supporting underserved adoptive families, adoptive parents of color, LGBTQ queer families, and single parents. Now I'm going to get more into our parameters, and I will also break down what the expectant parents we support look like, adoptive parents, fees, home study. I'm going to get more into the nitty-gritty of that. And for those that have hopped on, there will be times where I pause to allow for any questions that might be coming up for folks. So, PACT parameters, open adoption. That is a requirement with our organization, is that you need to come to this. You can be hesitant and curious and have some questions, but if you're already sitting there like, oh, no, closed adoption is all I want, we are not the right organization for you. There are some that still do closed adoption, but over years and years and years of listening to adoptees and first parents, the ones that you should listen to the most about this process, we realize that open adoption is the best way to move forward if possible. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but open adoption that includes in-person visits without Pact involved. You need to be open and comfortable for at least once a year in-person visit. I have some birth parents that are asking for 4 to 6 visits. We work with the families to figure out how that will look. We do have an age requirement. At least one parent needs to be under the age of 53, and in the case of couples, the older parent is under the age of 59. This policy that we actually recently just changed, it is different on the April orientation I did. This is our new updated and current. We based it on the average life expectancy in the United States, which is 77. And we designed it to lower the likelihood that an adopted person will suffer another parental loss before they launch into full adulthood around the age of 25. Our parameter is non-negotiable. I do not care if you're 54 and your health is amazing. You're going to be 74 with a 20-year-old. We do not allow sex or gender selection. Babies are assigned a sex at birth, but we don't know what somebody's gender identity or expression is going to be. I've worked with families that are like, oh, I'm parenting all boys and I just want a girl. That doesn't sound child-centered to me. That just sounds parent or adult-centered, that somebody dreamed about having a girl. I get that. That's what their dream was. And then they had all boys, and I guess they wanted a girl for, I don't know, ballet and tea time. What happens if that little girl wants to punch you in the face and do MMA fighting? You're going to be mad. This is not the baby I wanted. I have heard that throughout my year. This is not the baby I wanted. This is not the kid that I wanted. So we do not allow sex or gender selection. It leans dangerously close to baby shopping, which we also don't allow. And we have a handout on this topic as well. We do not have a marriage requirement. It can be easier if you are a married couple, if you're a two-parent family, once you get to the like finalization stages. But I have supported several families that are not legally married when they start my process. Many will do a quick courthouse wedding when they get close to the finalization because it's a little bit smoother, and then they'll celebrate later. No religious affiliation. Pact is not religiously affiliated, so we don't have anything like that. It is very, very rare that I have supported expectant parents that are specifically looking for, hi, I would like a Christian family that goes to church every Sunday. In my 11 years here, I've had people looking for Muslim or Islamic families the most. And by the most, I've had maybe 3 that have asked. But because we are not religiously affiliated, there is no religious affiliation associated with us, or like people are not coming saying, oh, I heard you have Jewish families, right? We have families across the spectrum of different religious practices and affiliations. And we require ongoing education once in our program. There's extensive education you do on the front end while you're doing your home study. And then there is ongoing education within our program that we lead, bi-monthly calls for all of our waiting families. And then we have webinars throughout the year that people can attend. So open adoption. This is usually people's biggest fear. This and the cost. Open adoption is not co-parenting. A lot of people call and say the kid is going to be confused. They're going to know who their parents are. I work with tons of kids now that are living open adoption and have for several years. And I have close friends who are birth parents who are navigating and living open adoption with the children that they placed. It is not co-parenting. The adoptive parent or parents is the legal parent. Open adoption is just like any other extended family. It's an ongoing relationship. It is direct contact between the adopting family and the birth family. I have a little asterisk of family/blood connection within BIPOC communities. This came from a panel that I did earlier this year with same-race adoptees, 2 Black adoptees, 1 Indian adoptee, South Asian Indian adoptee. And one of the Black adoptees said, I had a closed adoption, which was wild to me because within communities of color, there's so much about like blood connection and family and your blood, and we need to keep that. And this adoptee was like, but my parents didn't. My Black adoptive parents cut me off from my Black birth family and birth parents, totally ignoring that deep family blood. Community steps up, right? There's so many informal adoptions within communities of color. Yeah, so why, if I'm talking to families of color on here, why would you also like culturally thinking about how your communities respond? Informal adoptions historically been forever. So then why would you cut off communication with your child's blood family? I know they're coming to your family. I know you want to attach. I know you don't want to confuse them. but open adoption can work. I'll talk more about it's not going to fix everything. You will hear the word semi-open adoption. That usually means people meet and exchange non-identifying information and maintain contact through an intermediary. Or you might hear fully open, which is remaining in close and ongoing contact with individuals, or which includes visits over the life of the child. Pact does not use the term semi or full, we just say open. Open adoption to us also means maybe there's not direct connection and contact because birth parents aren't ready for it yet. Maybe they disappeared and contact fell off, or they said, oh, it's great that you want an open adoption, but I want closed adoption for now, right? So to open for us means even if there is no direct ongoing contact, you are still openly talking about how your family was formed. Your child still publicly and openly knows that they were adopted. Maybe there's photos in the house that you have. Maybe you have a book. Maybe your kid knows where their adoption paperwork is. All of that is part of their life, and should be given to them when ready. So we just say open because open adoption also means we are openly talking about it. We are acknowledging it. We are addressing it. There is an entire population of late discovery adoptees. They tend to be white adoptees or adoptees of color in same race placements. And they did not find out they were adopted until 25 or older. There's some in the 30s. The hosts of Black to the Beginning, which is a podcast you can check out. They are Black same race adoptees, two women. Both were late discovery adoptees. So they had a closed adoption, and then their parents kept it closed by not telling them, right? They had no contact with birth family. So maybe you have a closed adoption, but you are still openly talking about, we adopted you. Your birth family did this, right? That's what we mean about we just say open. It looks different from family to family. There is no one way to have an open adoption. There is no way to control an open adoption. You do not get to come into this process and say, well, we would like the birth parent to have these visits at this time and A, B, and C. It's an agreement and arrangement that you are working on together. Pact is there to support you, which I will talk about. Open adoption does not solve, fix, cure, or ensure anything. It may solve some problems. A lot of them are medical history. I was just at the doctor yesterday and they said, do you have this, 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 and this? And I had to say unknown, adopted, because I don't know anything. So it may solve some problems and provide a lot of vital information, but it'll also create new ones, right? It's going to ebb and flow. Majority of the expectant parents we support at Pact are seeking some level of openness, including 1 to 2 visits a year. A majority. And if they come to us saying, no, 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 I want closed, we talk with them about, we would like you to know the benefits of open adoption. It's not easy, but it's something we hope you can come around to, can come to navigate, so on and so forth. I've probably seen 99.9% of them say, okay, I would like some level of openness, even if it's just texting, once a month texting with photos. That is open adoption. That's more than I ever had. That's more than a lot of adoptees prior to 1990 ever had. So majority of expectant parents are seeking some level of openness. Closed adoptions are not child-centered, period. Who has a relationship that doesn't change, right? You, we always give this example of folks that have an arranged marriage. You figure it out, you navigate it. Folks that go to family reunions and people are like, oh man, we hate Uncle Steve, but we're going to see Uncle Steve at least once a year. Similar type of approach, similar type of mentality to have. We love our kid. We love their birth parents. We're able to parent their child. They are struggling with A, B, and C, maybe unemployment, maybe substance use, maybe domestic violence within their relationship. And we are still going to have this visit because that's what we committed to. This is our kid's blood and birth family. Who has a relationship that doesn't change, right? This is going to ebb and flow. It's going to be all sorts of things. And that is also why Pact is here. We have helped to navigate several open adoptions. We have helped families search and have reunion. And by navigating open adoption, it can be as simple as, hey, we lost contact. How do we reconnect? To our birth parent is engaged in substance use again. How do we navigate this visit coming up, right? We are here to help families through that process because it's lifelong. There is, in the state of California and other states, a legal binding post-adoption contact agreement. We call it a PACA for short. Um, it lays out, this is the child being placed. The two families have agreed on texting once a month, a Google Photos album, a private Instagram, getting together on birthdays and holidays, right? Like we help you go through it. We work with you, we work with the birth family, and there is a PACA that is filed with your adoption finalization paperwork. It is the one piece of, I like to say, power that a birth family or a birth parent has. They've signed everything away. Their child is not with them anymore, but this is the one piece of paper that they can hold on to if something happens. And by that, I mean you agree to have visits, and then adoptive parents, because this has happened, the second an adoption is finalized, adoptive parents disappear and close the adoption, and contact is completely lost. With a PACA, the birth family can come back around and say, excuse me, we made this agreement. We all signed it. It was finalized with our documents. Um, you are not living up to the agreement that we made to center this child in this lifelong process and journey. There are tons of adoptive parents who have closed adoptions the second the adoption gets finalized. When it's a state where there's no PACA, there's not much we can do. When it's a state that there is a PACA, we're going to see what we can do. I've had adoptees push back on me and be like, oh, well, how much power are they really going to get? Their rights were severed, da 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 da. I've never been in a situation where a birth parent has had to pull out the PACA card, but I'd like to hope that if they do, the legal team behind it and Pact will be there to support them to ensure that their open adoption agreement is re-honored and connection is reestablished. Any questions on open adoption? If you want to drop them into the chat, please do so. There also will be a pause moment coming up soon about questions. So areas of possible challenge for families within our placement program. This is a national average that is still applicable because I've heard from various agencies over the years. It is a 2 to 4 year wait time from point of activation. That's not this orientation. That's not your pre-placement meeting. It's not your home study first visit. It is from the point where Pact has said, you are active, you are on our website. If a baby is born tomorrow, I will be able to call you. I have families that take 7 months to go active. I have families that take 3 years to go active. That the first part is all in your control, but the second part is not in your control. So from the point of activation, be prepared for 2 to 4 years of waiting for a placement. The majority of our placements for Bay Area families have been under 2 years. A few have been just under 4. Non-Bay Area families will face a longer wait time. I have been here for 11 years. Across the board, families who do not live in the Bay Area face long wait times, adopt through somebody else, or stop the process because it got too long or they aged out. We are clear with you from the beginning. If you live out of state, I am clear with you in this orientation. If you do not live in the Bay Area, it will be a longer wait time for your family. And I never know who's going to call me, right? Somebody might call me tomorrow who lives in Idaho and you're in Idaho and they want an Idaho family. Great. But it's just not common due to where we are, where we can do our outreach, where we can get our information out there to people considering all of their options is predominantly within the Bay Area. New York families, I said it at the start, I will repeat again, we are not able to work with families who live in the state of New York. They require their families to work with licensed agencies. We are only licensed in California. New York and California, kind of across the board, are the ones with the most laws regarding law degrees, medical degrees, I got agency licensing, right? I can work with families in Connecticut, Idaho, Texas, New Mexico. As of now, I know I can. And I do know that New York will not let their families work with Pact because we are not licensed in New York. Single parents. Single parents will face a longer wait time in our program. I've been here for 11 years, and the one single parent I supported was actually contacted from the agency she worked with for her first adoption. She came to us for her second. She wasn't a fan of the first one, but when they called with a potential placement, she sought after and went that way. But single parents definitely will face a longer wait time in our program. A lot of the pregnant folks are single themselves and are looking for a two-parent family specifically. We know single parents can be great. I know non-Bay Area families can be great. All of these people, I know you all can be great. And I am not the one choosing who I am placing my child with, right? We are listening to the expectant parents we support as they make this life-altering decision and are choosing strangers to raise their kid and have a lifelong relationship with. So if they're calling and saying, I want a two-parent Black family who lives in Oakland, we're going to do our best to find them that because that is supporting them, that is giving them real options. Um, that is child centered. If there is a Black family for a Black child who lives in the Bay and she wants open adoption, right? So these are, you all can be great, but these are populations that can face possible challenges. People parenting children already, specifically by birth, we definitely work with pregnant folks who are like, they can already have a kid. Why would I give them my kid? I would like somebody who cannot have a child. Um, I've placed with plenty of families actually in the last couple of years. I can think of like 3 to 5 that have a child by birth and then they adopted for their second child. So it's not always applicable. And I have sat with pregnant folks that have said, no, they already have a kid. I want to give it to a family who does not, will not be able to. Um, we get that things can change, right? We tell them right now they cannot have a child, but if something happens, because that happens often, your body relaxes, you bring a baby home, and then all of a sudden you get pregnant, um, if that's your family makeup. But again, it's a possible challenge area. If you're already parenting a child through adoption, it's a little more appealing because then the birth parent is like, oh, they've already done this. How are they navigating openness? How did they do this? My kid will not be the only adopted kid. Um, but we don't know till we get there. We do list LGBTQI and queer families. This is not 1950s adoption, right? We're in 2024, so queer families are much more accepted and welcomed and present within the adoption landscape and community. And I still work with pregnant folks that might not live in a blue state or might come from a different pocket of the country and are like, nope, I want a mother and a father, or I want, right, like I want this specific thing. Um, and in the last 4 years, LGBTQ headed and queer families have been the most sought after in our program. We have placed with 7 queer-headed families in the last 4 years. One that already had a child by birth. Everybody else, it was their first kid. And for a lot of the birth parents, they were, no, maybe I'd say like 3 to 4 of the 7 came to us saying, I want a queer family. That was specifically what they wanted. That happened, that started in 2020. I've been here since 2013. 2020 was the first time I actually had somebody come in and say, I want a queer family. Up until that point, I was not doing a lot of placements with LGBTQ or queer-headed families. In the last 4 years, several. So could be lower. I actually dropped it lower on the list because of what I've seen in the last 7 years. And a year ago, we had a pregnant person that was looking at 2 families, and they decided part of it was the hetero family had a parent that was going to stay at home. Um, and they were open to looking at the queer family we had, but those 2 parents, there was not somebody who was going to be home 24/7. In the hetero family, there was somebody who was going to be a stay-at-home parent, and that was more appealing to the birth parent. Level of openness. If you're somebody who's like, we understand open adoption, we want to have one, we're comfortable with texting and letters and da da da, and one visit a year, that's fine. I don't want to push you to something that you're not comfortable with because that's just going to cause more problems. I do need you to be open to some level of a visit. You will get plenty of education around this if you enter our program, education and support. But we have pregnant people that want 4 to 6 months or 4 to 6 visits a year. If you're a family that's like, we can only do 1 to 2, I'm not going to present you to somebody who's asking for 4 to 6. We are a small program. We're a tiny organization. You can go on my website right now. I only have 5 families waiting and ready to take a child home if we get a call. We typically, if I average it out, do 2 to 4 placements a year, sometimes none. And that's okay for us because we're not relying on family separation to keep our doors open. Other agencies would freak out. Other agencies have closed because they haven't done enough placements. 2022, we did 7. That was an exception, the most I've ever seen. And then in the last 2 years, it's kind of averaged back out to the 2 to 4 placements a year. So we are small. I would be cautious if you call an agency that's like, oh, we do 8 placements a month. How ethical are they? And we never know. I kind of hinted at it before. We never know what type of families expected parents are seeking. This process cannot be predicted or controlled. I had a two-parent queer Asian family come to my program in 2020, 2021, something like that. And I said, ooh, this could be a really long process for you. And they're like, we know. That's why we're getting started. I think they were mid 30s, something like that. They're like, yeah, we know. We've done the research. We know Asian placements domestically are not whatever, right? They were prepared. They were settled. From point of activation to bringing their daughter home was 7 months, I think. Might have even been less. Nope, 3 to 4 months. I forgot. I wrote a note down. A two-parent Asian queer family who I was like, ooh, buckle up. It's going to be a long time. From point of activation to their daughter coming home was about 3 to 4 months. It took them maybe like 9 months to a year to get to that point. So their whole process um, was just under two, but their actual wait time for a baby to come home was 3 to 4 months. So that's about, I now know, I now emphasize, yes, you could face a long wait time with these possible things. And I never know who's going to call our organization looking for a family. I will pause for a second for any questions and also check my time. Ooh, we are good. You can use the chat if you feel like you want to unmute yourself. You can also do that. And I will continue as people think if they want to drop a question in. So the specifics, expectant or birth parents. I will say birth parents because we actually have worked with people who placed once before, or we have worked with people actually in the last 2 years that place a child over the age of one, right? So they're parents, and then they do become birth parents. The age range is typically early 20s to mid 30s. I'd say in the last 4 years, it's been about 28 to 38-year-olds. But in 2022, and for my first time in the 11 years I've been here, 2022, we had like 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, or maybe 17, 19, 20. It was my first time of working with like teen or a little bit that transition age, right? Not high school, still in college sort of thing. One was in high school, the other two were about taking college courses, not in high school anymore, that sort of thing. Some are single parents already, unable to care for the child or children they are currently parenting. Some might be struggling as single parents, which is why they come to us saying, I want a two-parent family. Some may have been raised by a single parent who was great. And then they say, oh, yeah, my single parent was great. I don't care if it's a single parent. And some might have been parented by a single parent who was not great. And then they say, nope, not putting that on my kid. I would like a two-parent family. I tend to see that with people who are already parents that they really want, especially if they're a single parent, that they really want a two-parent family. They may not be receiving prenatal care. As I said, they're not really people in this world that are like, let me get pregnant and give my child to somebody else. So there can be substance use, opiates, meth, cocaine, alcohol. Um, Alcohol, no matter who you are or where you live or your education level or awareness or access, I think everybody knows what alcohol can do to a fetus. I have not dealt with people that are like excessive drinkers. I have dealt with people that, hey, I didn't know I was pregnant, so I was still having my mimosa at brunch. But the second I found out I was pregnant, I stopped. So there can be some alcohol use in first trimester. Once they find out they're pregnant, whether they're going to place or parent, they typically have all stopped alcohol use. What they don't stop are things like cigarette use, marijuana, and harder drugs like cocaine, meth, and opiates. We have worked with pregnant folks who are on, I think it's like the methadone clinic where they're getting help, but then they're on a different substance to help with the other substances they are abusing. Another common misconception of substance use is in the last 7 years, the pregnant folks who had the hardest drugs in their systems and had their babies sent to the NICU were white pregnant people who delivered. The pregnant people of color, um, in the last 4 years, I've had maybe one that was using cocaine. Everybody else was either no substances or marijuana. So that trope of, ooh, it comes up a lot with white families that are adopting across race when people are saying, oh, well, black moms are going to be drug users or whatever. No. In the last 4 years, the two babies that had drugs in their system and had to go to NICU were born to white women. The babies born to women or people of color did not have to go to NICU. One's parent did use cocaine. The others were nothing or marijuana. Unplanned pregnancy means stress. Denial is part of the process. So they might not be taking care of themselves. Like I said, they might be still using substances, things like that. They are hoping to maintain or improve the life of that and their child. So we have worked with some folks who are like, I'm the first in my family to go to college. There's no way I can compromise that by raising a kid. I'm only 20. Um, there are people in their 30s. I'm unhoused and I don't see myself changing my. I worked with somebody who was unhoused. All of her other kids have been removed by foster care. She was older, she had more knowledge, and she said, I lost all my other kids to the foster care system. I don't know where they are. I'm not going to change my life. I'm not going to be able to parent this child, but instead of having them removed, I would like to do a voluntary private placement where I can choose the family and I can know where my kid is. Right? Her other kids were removed in her 20s. This kid was in her 30s. She had more info. She knew what the game was, for lack of a better word. She already was like, I don't know where any of my kids are in the foster care system, but I've learned that with private infant placement, I choose the family and I'll know where my kid is. And she does. She knows where he is. Social drinking, cigarette smoking, marijuana, I said that are pretty common. The pregnant people we are supporting are seeking families that will share their child's racial makeup. In the last 4 years specifically, after the murder of George Floyd, I've had a lot more pregnant folks come in and say absolutely no white parents whatsoever. Some that will not consider an interracial couple. One in 2022 said, I'd like a black parent. If they have a partner, they can't be white. Ideally, I'd like them to be black, but as long as they're another person of color. But this person who did not go through with a placement, but when they called us, they said, no, not even an interracial couple. I want two parents of color. So they are seeking their child's same racial makeup. They are seeking us to avoid a transracial placement. I've taken too many calls from people who said, oh, I called an agency. All the families they showed me were white. I'm not. I called an agency who told me that Black people don't adopt, but then I found you guys. Are you real? Yes, we are real. The Asian family I was talking about, the mom thought it was a filler photo that we just put on our website. And I said, no, that's a family. They're ready to adopt. They're home study approved. But what she'd been seeing, what she'd been told, what she's been hearing, the narrative that is out there is that only white people adopt and only white people are going to want your baby and that sort of thing. So we get a lot of people who are coming to us specifically for families of color. And they are, as I've talked about, seeking open adoptions that include in-person visits. So how do we work with expectant or birth parents? We offer true options counseling, starting with family preservation first. That is always the first thing we do. How can you parent this child? We provide information regarding family preservation and abortion if it's still within their time frame or something that they believe in or would like to explore. We assume parenting is possible if they are connected with the right resources and time. I know too many birth parents who were like, I just needed 2 months. Um, I made a permanent decision for a temporary situation. I just needed 2 months, and then I would have been able to parent my kid. But the world is not set up to support family preservation and folks that might be struggling. So we assume parenting is possible if connected with the right resources. If somebody calls us and says, I've been thinking about this because money is real tight, and I don't have enough time to save for a baby, we would say, well, will you be able to save money in like 3 months? Oh, yeah, yeah. Great. How can we support you with that so you can continue parenting? We dive deep into the reasons someone is considering adoption. We've taken calls from people who just have taken a pregnancy test and are pregnant and they freak out. They're like, I can't do this. I have to do a new adoption plan. We do not match with them that early. We do not do early matching. I'll talk about that. But we dive deep into the reasons why they are considering. Adoption and parenting are different lives for the child. We do not frame it as better or worse. A lot of people will say, oh, I was adopted. I was given a better life. It's a different life. We don't know what your life would have been like had you stayed with, right? I'm from another country. I went to people who don't look like me, don't know my language, don't do my culture, don't do my traditions, don't, right? I have a different life. I wouldn't say it's better because now I have to navigate the world on my own because I don't have my parents behind me to be like, oh, she's got white parents. That's why she can't speak Spanish. I now walk through the world. Your child will walk through the world without you behind them, even if you're same race placement, right? So it's a different life. We do not frame it as better or worse to expectant parents. We are very clear with them that it is different. If adoption is right for them, we do not do any early matching. We do true case management services to the extent possible. Early matching is, I've gotten emails from agencies that have somebody who is 2 months pregnant and they are looking to match them with a prospective family. That is not okay. People are not, right? Like people are like, wait, I need some time. They feel the baby kick and then they're like, whoa, there's a real human in here. They have to make the choice twice. Once when they find out they're pregnant and they think, I'm not sure if I can do this. And then the second time when the baby is here, can I go through with this? I'm looking at this human. Can I place them with another family and just kind of watch from the sidelines or be somewhat involved? Or, wow, I really can't do this. I am going to parent my kid. So we do not do early matching. We typically wait until somebody is about 6.5, 7 months pregnant. We do tend to get people who are a little bit farther along, mostly because they connected with another agency who told them they didn't have any families of color. And then that person is like, I don't believe that. I'm going to do more research. This is 2024. This is not 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 70s, 80s adoption anymore. The world is at people's fingertips to look up, do Black people adopt, right? And then they often will find Pact. So we do get people who are a little bit farther along because they haven't been able to find the family they were looking for. Um, we involve, name, and notify the father with every possible placement. We do our due diligence to find out who he is, where he may be. We can only trust what they disclose. Some people will be completely honest because the relationship was not negative or traumatic or dangerous. And some can be pregnant from a not safe situation or from somebody who is not safe. Uh, we still do our best to say he has a right to know. This child is going to have questions. They have a right to know who their other parent is. We serve him, we notify him, we do everything we can with the information that is shared with us. We are not an organization that tells a pregnant person, oh, just don't put the father on the birth certificate, or oh, just tell me you don't know who he is. There are social workers and adoption agencies that do that. They tell a pregnant person, don't tell me who the other parent is. We just have to work with you. You're the one making your decision, your body, your decision. That's not child-centered to us. We are going to ask about the father or the other parent every time and do everything we can to notify him or them. Um, you can actually look at our approach on Planned Parenthood. This is on their national website. We, Planned Parenthood, after pretty much after the murder of George Floyd, COVID, everybody shut down, right? Every industry, adoption is an industry, every industry got called to task. Schools, theater, sports, um, museums, right? Like everything's so white. What are you doing to diversify? The same ripple effect came to the adoption industry. A lot more awareness was coming around to why are there so many white parents with kids of color? Why are there so many kids of color removed, right? So foster care and adoption, fine tooth comb in the last 4 years. As a result of that, Planned Parenthood reached out and created a team that was comprised of birth parents, adoptees, um, and I think reproductive justice workers, but predominantly birth parents and adoptees to redo their adoption website page. And my coworker and agency director, Susan Dusha Alexander, was on the team. Um, and a lot of this is they looked at PACS materials and realized, this is how it should be listed. This is the information that should be out there. Susan worked on it for, I don't even know, a year. It launched either earlier this year or right near the end of 2023. So it's only been active on their site maybe in the last year. It talks about everything. And as a result of this, we helped somebody obtain custody of their child back because they were completely coerced. Happened in January 2024. A pregnant person out on the East Coast was completely coerced, paid ridiculous amounts of money to basically place her child. And she had placed because you don't have power, right? You're struggling. You're like, oh gosh, what do I do? Had not signed anything yet, was struggling, did a Google search, found this, looked it up, and was like, oh, the agency did that, they did that, they did that, they did that. Called us, and we helped her get her child back because she was coerced and unethically placed her child in adoption. The agency was a fake lawyer, um, fake statements. She had receipts, she had texts, she had emails. So it happens out there. It was an agency in the end of 2023, early 2024 that completely coerced, used a fake lawyer or he was not copacetic. It was a bad look. But that happened. And then this mom found this literally like 2 days after she placed her kid and was like, excuse me. And then we found her legal representation and she was reunified with her child. That is how we work with birth parents or expected parents or people considering placement. You can go onto that site, you can look at our materials, but that is the approach that we take. It's not what some people want. There are people out there that want an agency that is like, you should place your kid. We can support you, right? And if you want to do that, great. But Pact is not the agency that operates like that. The specifics. So children, more than 90% of the babies placed are Black. That includes biracial or multiracial individuals. At least one of their birth parents says, I identify as Black. About 8% of the babies placed are Latinx and Indigenous, specifically Central American, Mexican, Guatemalan. So very indigenous features, dark hair, darker brown skin. A lot of the Latinx birth parents are undocumented. So they wait until their child is born here to do a placement, or they call us when they're farther along in the process. Some are monolingual. It kind of all depends. And about 2% are Asian, Pacific Islander, Native, or other. They are not that common. We did just place an Asian baby about 10 days ago. But the one before that was probably 2022. And then the one before 2022 was probably around 2012. So Asian placements are not that common. And if you look at the demographic and population of California, there also can be a high population of Asian children coming for potential placement. About 80% are born healthy, so that means no positive tox screen. Their APGAR scars are clear. They don't have to go to the NICU. They don't have to do anything. They like come out as a full healthy baby. That does not guarantee they will remain a full healthy baby as they grow up. So that is also something you want to consider. A lot of people call and say, oh, I want a healthy, no substance exposed baby. Not going to be common. They're likely to have some sort of substance exposure or definitely a higher possibility of that. But then I have a lot of people who are like born healthy at birth. We will navigate whatever else might pop up as the child gets older. But just because they were born healthy when they were placed with you does not mean it's going to remain that way. We don't know what genetic condition might pop up. We don't know what other health thing might pop up. Mental health, physical health, we don't know. We are looking for families for children, not children for families. Say that again. We are looking for families for children, not children for families. I learned this from Dr. Joyce McGuire Pavo, who wrote The Family of Adoption. I trained under her while I was getting my MSW in Boston. And when I heard that back in 2010, I was like, wow, yeah, you are looking for families for children, not children for families. I'm not here to help you baby shop. There might be some agencies that cater that way. If that's the fit for you, then that's the fit for you. But we are looking for families who are ready for this lifelong commitment. We do predominantly infant placement. I should probably put an asterisk there because that's not always applicable. We have placed in the last 2 years, we've placed a child over the age of 3, a child over the age of 1. But predominantly it still is babies immediately from birth to you, or maybe a few days. Every now and then we have kids that are maybe a few months old, but it is predominantly fresh baby out of the womb going to your family. Specifics in adopting parents or prospective adoptive families. 98% of our placements are with same race families where one or two parents of color with a similar racial or ethnic heritage to the child. We routinely work with couples, LGBTQI, queer families, and singles. Yes, I said it could be challenging for some of these populations, and we are still here working with these families. Transracial adopters have required extensive training as part of their process. Many do our education, but not our placement. Doing our education does not mean we are guaranteeing and writing off, oh, this family can adopt across race. It does not guarantee that you get to enter our program, but it's education that is going to help you in the lifelong journey if you do adopt across racial lines. Our pre-adoptive or prospective adoptive parents generally range from about 30 to 45 years old. We do have that age requirement. Older parents over the age of 45 could also face a longer wait time. I've been on the other end of the phone when somebody has called and said, I don't want to parent. I want to place my child. I say, great. What sort of family are you looking for? They tell me to pick the family. They say, pick who's been waiting the longest. I say, oh, the family that's been waiting the longest, they're 50 and 51. Oh, no, 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 that's too old. Who's next? So it's also the pregnant person. To them, 45 might be too old, 52 might be too old. And they might be looking for mid to late 30s or early 40s. Then there are some who want an older parent because you're established, financially stable, like that sort of thing. We don't know when we're going until we're there. And many of our prospective adoptive families are going to be first time parents. This is the way their family is going to grow and expand. Moving into our home study process. This is only applicable if you are a family that is within our service area. I know there's somebody here in New Jersey. I'm not able to do your home study process. I'll explain what that looks like on the next few slides. We use SAFE, or the Structured Analysis Family Evaluation. You can look them up, you can Google them. We like to use them because we have somebody that we can check in with, somebody that can do checks and balances, somebody that we respond to. Within private infant adoption, it's really just a free for all, and agencies can write up whatever they want for a home study. I've seen home studies that are 6 pages long. My home studies are anywhere from 15 to 20 pages long. As an adoptee myself, the home studies I've seen from other agencies are a joke to me. They don't cover anything. This process, I learn all sorts of things. My perfect example is I had a family, we were not always an agency. We were not able to do home studies until 2018. All of my families prior to that in the Bay Area had another agency that did their home study. I had a family that came to us. They had their home study with somebody else. I said, we would like to do your home study for free. So one, we can get practice and then we can hold it and we can have everything, right? Like in our, we can do everything with Pact A to Z. Originally, they had to go to somebody else for LMNOP. And they were like, oh, great. Yeah, free home study. Let's do it. So I read through their original home study and I'm like, oh, okay. Then I sit down with them. One of them almost died. One of them has a chronic something that caused the almost death. They went through another like severe family death, and there were two other things that were not noted anywhere in their original home study. That is not okay. We need to know what families have been through. I need to know that you're going to be able to handle a colicky baby, a baby screaming their head off, where you might be like, oh, I didn't give birth to this kid. Did I do the right thing? Right? Like, if you haven't been through stuff, I'm not going to know if you're going to be able to handle parenting. I don't need a picture perfect family that has like nothing wrong. Um, you're going to crumble when things get hard. I want to know if you've been through hard stuff. I also want to know if somebody almost died, right? Like that, we need to let an expectant parent know they have a health condition, their life expectancy might not be great. Like they have every right to know who they are placing their child with. And the home study of my one family told me nothing of that. When I sat down with them and did the safe approach and went through all of our checks and balances, I learned all sorts of helpful things. They were approved, they became a waiting family, right? Like it's not just because you went through stuff doesn't mean you're going to pass. But I also, a lot of home studies are a joke, and don't provide really enough information. We have a different approach. So if you're within our service area, you will have the safe home study approach for your family. Under SAFE, all visits occur at your home. There's typically 3. You have SAFE paperwork, 2 different questionnaires and reference letters, and then you have a whole bunch of additional forms. These additional forms are going to apply to everybody, even if your home study is not done by Pact. A home study requires getting birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce or death certificates if applicable, medical clearances, going to your doctor every year while you are waiting to ensure that you are still healthy, fingerprint clearances, that's the live scan, employment verification yearly to ensure that you are still employed and we're not about to place a baby with somebody who just lost their job. Financial and tax information is gathered yearly. So this can be really intrusive. And if you think about it, we're giving a human life to another family that's a stranger to the birth family. So we need to do our due diligence. We need to be able to tell a birth parent in as good a place as possible. We've interviewed them. We've gathered their background. They are safe, right? That's what I have to hope. I don't know what's going to happen after we step out of the process, but the most I can do is like heavy work on the front end to ensure that this family is ready for this process. Your employer is going to have to know if you're employed by somebody, your doctor, right? They fill out forms that say, uh, will this patient be a good adoptive parent or stuff like that. If you're in mental health services, we're going to need letters from therapists, medication providers, if you have any medications, that sort of thing. For fingerprint clearances, when a live scan report brings up police records, arrests, or misdemeanors, it is not an automatic failure. And there are obvious hits that will be an automatic failure. I think you can figure them out. Murder or anything involving a child would be an automatic failure. There will be hits that require a waiting period of 5 to 7 years to pass. I took a call from somebody back in either 2019 or 2020 who said, I know I have a police record. I have this sort of hit. What do you know about it? And we looked it up, and it was they have to wait 5 to 7 years until the incident has passed to be able to at least come to this process. There will be hits that are 10 years old or more, and we will talk about them. For my Bay Area families, it's typically marijuana possession and protesting. That's what I get a lot of Bay Area families. It kind of tracks. They've either been arrested for marijuana or Occupy Wall Street, the Gulf War, Black Lives Matter protest, right? Very Bay Area. We will be required to obtain copies of police reports for any arrests aside from minor traffic violations. I've had families with DUIs. We need that report. We recognize when a hit is 10 years or older, right? You're no longer 22 when you drove drunk, right? You're now 42. We're just going to talk about it and get more information. So our program on the left, if you are within our service area, that's the Bay Area in Northern California, pretty much up to the Oregon border, I believe. We only go down maybe Santa Cruz, maybe a little bit farther. We do not have licensure or approval in Southern California. We do have agencies there that we know of that can help with home studies, but if you are in my direct service area, the left side of the screen applies to you. If you are out of my area, the right side of the screen applies to you. Everybody does our consultation, pre-placement, or BCAC. BCAC is for transracial families. Everybody does a home study process. If you're with Pact, it's with SAFE. If you're with your other state or your local area, it's with a full service licensed agency in your area. We can help you identify one. Everybody's going to do education, webinars, books, conferences, trainings. Everybody's going to work on their Dear Expectant Parent letter. That's the adoption profile booklet that you create. Everybody's going to be active as a waiting family once their home study is done and everything is done. That's when we present your profile. Then the next step, if you move forward, is match and placement. Then everybody will have post-placement visits. My local area folks, Pact, will do your post-placement visits. My out-of-area folks, your home study agency will come back in and do post-placement visits. And then everybody has access to Pact's post-placement support, education, and community. So for my out-of-area, we can do everything. It's just the home study that we are not able to conduct for you, obviously, because you're not within our area. I typically have 12 to 15 waiting families at a time and about 3 to 5 in the wings. I said it already. I only have 5 waiting families, only one that is Bay Area. Our current emergent need is two-parent Black and Latinx families and Asian families, because I don't have any two-parent Asian families that live within the Bay Area. That is our like direct immediate need. I only have one Bay Area family that could take a placement. Everybody else is not within my area. And if I have somebody who's like adamant about, I want a placement, I want an adoption that I get to visit my kid 3 times a year, and I want them to be just over the Bay Bridge, I only have one family that I can show. I will highlight, oh, here's a SoCal family that can come up to visit, right? Like I'll do that, and it's their decision on who they want to place with. So we are in need of two-parent families of color within the Bay Area. We occasionally get calls from other adoption agencies or professionals interested in our families of color because they typically don't have any, or they have maybe 2. I know I only have 5, but it's 5. Every family in my program has at least one person of color. Other agencies, they maybe have 2 families in their entire program that have people of color. We have connections to local hospitals and programs within the Bay, abortion clinics. There is a late term abortion clinic out of, I think, Zuckerberg SF Gen. We are like one of the top agencies on their call list when somebody comes in and has missed the time frame for abortion. We have direct calls to another substance abuse program within Zuckerberg SF, where if somebody's at risk of their child being removed and they don't want to face the foster care program, some of the people within this program will say, oh, have you considered private placement where you get to choose the family, et cetera, et cetera. Planned Parenthood, as I talked about, we are on that website. We are listed. I think we're the only adoption agency listed on Planned Parenthood's website. And local health centers. We've gone around, dropped off our information. Obviously, hospitals that we've done placements with in the Bay Area already know about us. There are some hospitals where the social worker will immediately call us first. There are some that are like, I need to show all of the options, which we get, but our information is out there within local health centers, abortion clinics, and Planned Parenthood. All Options is a national talk line. Pact is one of 6 agencies they refer callers to. All Options does pregnancy, parenting, abortion, adoption. And if somebody has more questions, they say, check out these agencies. If it's specifically a pregnant person of color, they will highlight Pact as an organization that would have families of color for that person to consider. And we are mentioned in the recent book, Relinquished, The Politics of Adoption and Privilege of American Motherhood. That book came out this year, done by a researcher who has no connection to the adoption triad, no direct connection. If you haven't heard of it or haven't followed it, definitely check it out. If you move forward with Pact at all, it will be your required reading. It is also available on Audible. It is not an easy read, but we believe that families need to be aware of the history and politics of adoption and privilege of American motherhood, especially if they are going to be involved in this process and industry. Adoption is an industry, for lack of a better word. Pausing for any questions. We only have about 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, my clock is fast. We have 15 minutes and a few more slides to go over. This is also being recorded as a reminder, so if you need to go back, you can do that as well. So our sliding scale, our services for prospective and pre-adoptive parents are offered on a steep sliding scale. We collect info from each pre-adoptive family that gives us an unbiased idea of income, assets, and ability to fund an adoption. For families who live on earned income, generally the fee will be determined by gross. For those who have assets, including property beyond the home, cash, stocks, that sort of thing, other investments, we look at net worth and determine where you fit on the scale. Gathering financial information is a requirement for the home study process. We review it every year to ensure placement on our scale is current. It's going to happen for everybody. If we don't do your home study agency is likely going to want to see your financial info as well. So you do need to be prepared for that. Tax forms, a form you fill out, employment verification. If you're self-employed, you'll get a notice on how to do that and how to track that. But we collect everything to determine where a family falls. Our case management fees range from $1,000 to $11,000 as determined by the sliding scale, and it's divided into 3 different payments. So if somebody's total case management fee is $6,000, when they are ready to become a Pact family, they're like, yep, we're going to sign a contract, we're going to get in, we're going to start this process. You pay 1/3, so $2,000. Then the next $2,000 is due at match if it is a match period where you have time to be matched with a pregnant person. And then the last $2,000 is due at placement. So for families that maybe you come into the program, you pay 1/3 of your case management fee, and then boop, you get pregnant. Boop, you don't want to do this anymore. Boop, the wait was too long. We're not collecting that remaining $4,000. We only connected that first 2. That's if your fee is $6,000 to us. That first 2 is covering all the work and support we did to get you up to that point. You're getting access to webinars, trainings, the education, Dear Expectant Parent, right? So that initial one is not refundable because we've done actual work for you in our program. It's the next payments that will either roll over, but also are not due until you reach that step. So there are agencies that are going to ask for $11,000 to $18,000 to $20,000 upfront. We are asking for $1,100 to $3,300 is typically my range. Upfront, typically non-refundable. I get that's still money, right? You could be out $1,100 if you suddenly get pregnant and you stop the process. $1,100, or anywhere from 5 to 20,000 with other agencies. I've dealt with too many families that have called me and said, I've already lost $20,000 with this other agency I was working with. You want to check their fee structure. What is refundable? What is not? What will roll over? Are they going to make you repay? If you pay a match fee, right? You are matched with somebody who's pregnant, you pay that next 2,000, then they decide to parent. You have a placement that's not moving forward. We roll over the two you paid. There might be some money we pull because services were done, but we roll over. So it's not like, oh, I have to pay 2,000, 2,000, 2,000 with every match. We roll over that payment. Home study fees, advisement relinquishment, ICPC, and post-placement visits will apply when applicable. That is only for my area folks for the most part. The case management is everybody, no matter who you work with. Excuse me 1 second. I could feel a cough coming and I did not want that to happen. All adoptions will incur additional fees depending on the placement situation. Agency fees when an additional agency is involved. You live here in Oakland, you work with Pact. An agency in Washington State calls me and says, hi, I need a Black family. We don't have any. Do you have anybody? Yes, we do. Great. We're an agency in Washington. Here are our fees. These are the fees we are going to request. You are responsible for that. We will do our best to have them either be discounted or not at all, because, hey, you came to us looking for something you didn't have. Not always possible. But if there is another agency that is involved, you are responsible for their fees. If it is just Pact and it's a pregnant person who called Pact and you live here in Oakland, all your fees are laid out. You know exactly what you're going to pay. If you live somewhere else, you're paying my case management fees, but then you're responsible for your home study agency, their post placement, their ICPC, if that applies. I'll get to what that means and whatnot. So those are going to be additional fees that could pop up. Legal, if applicable. If both birth parents are involved and sign paperwork, number one, that's the ideal because they're both involved, they're both known, they're both identified, they both agreed this is what we're doing. And it's ideal because you won't need a lawyer to find the second parent, typically the father, to terminate their rights. If it is a second parent who cannot be found or refuses to respond to us, even though we did find them, you will need a lawyer to terminate their rights in court. Those are legal fees that are, we don't control them. That is from the lawyer. Any travel expenses, even if you live here in Oakland and the baby's born in San Jose, you're thinking of mileage. Maybe you have to stay over. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're flying somewhere, right? Travel expenses. Again, we don't control that. Placement related expenses, mileage, postage, documents. Pact has a placement escrow that we ask all families to put $3,000 into. We track everything that we do, all of our mileage, all of our postage, gift cards for expectant parents, meetings, bridge tolls, lunch, parking meter, right? We track everything and we pull it from that 3K. Any money remaining after placement and after an adoption is finalized can either be refunded to you or donated to one of our programs or split, right? Some families will donate some and have some returned. Some families use all 3,000 or potentially more, which we talk about when we get to that potential placement. Some families have spent, I don't know, I feel like I had one family that all they had was like 200, $300, and it was mileage, postage, because we express overnight to Sacramento or to whatever state, birth certificates. We got copies of original birth certificates. Like that money was all really legal paperwork stuff. From that escrow, we also pull expectant and birth parent expenses. They need a pay as you go phone. They need a BART card. Maybe they need housing help or rent help. Maybe they need who knows what, right? That's what we also pull from there. If it is somebody who is calling us and they are going to have a lot more expenses or needs, we review that with all of our families before you say, yeah, we'll enter into a match. We review everything with you that might potentially come up. Here on the screen, this is also, I think it is on our website, and I can also email if folks are interested or if you've ever received our info before. The two columns on each side, home study for CA residents only, that's our area, and post placement, that is only for folks that are like here directly in our service area. The three in the middle are what's going to apply to everybody, no matter what. Everybody's going to do case management, even if you live in Idaho. Advisement relinquishment, if the baby is born here in Oakland and we are supporting the parent as they terminate their rights, but you're an Idaho family, you're still paying for that because we did that service. If you're in Idaho and the baby's here in Oakland, the ICPC is going to apply. That is the Interstate Compact for the Protection of Children. It is California ensuring with Idaho that, oh, this Idaho family has a legal home study. They are clear. They have no live scan hits. And if they do, they're ancient or were protesting. The states have to talk to each other before the baby leaves California to go back to Idaho or wherever you live. ICPC is only applicable if somebody or if a baby is crossing state lines. If you live in San Diego and the baby is born here in Oakland, they're not crossing state lines, so ICPC does not apply. If you live in Tahoe City and the baby is born in Reno, I know you can get there in like 15 minutes, but it's still crossing state lines, so ICPC would apply. You'll see our income bracket on the scale. We are actually considering increasing our fees or adjusting some of them. We haven't done so in the last maybe 6 years or so, or potentially adding an additional bracket a little bit more for Bay Area, right? There are families that make over 500K. What this also does is it helps to subsidize lower income families. You are paying on the higher end if you make more money, and it's helping to subsidize our other families. We are looking to make this possible, right? Just because a family doesn't have $55,000 to put towards an adoption placement doesn't mean they're not going to be good adoptive parents. That's why we have a sliding scale. That's why we have that. And if you're like, oh, wow, add up the entire bottom line for families that are over 300K. I was an English major, not a math major, and I know I should know this. I believe it is still under 30,000. There are families I know who have paid anywhere from 50 to $75,000 for an adoption placement. Um, so our highest end people are still paying not as much as somebody else with another agency that they go to, if that makes sense. Also, some people might be like, wow, $4,500 for a home study. I know I know agencies that only charge 1,500 flat. Great. What is their case management? Case management for families over 300K is 11,000. Case management for most home study agencies is not based on a scale and ranges anywhere from 18 to 25,000. So it's still a lot of money. We get that. And if you add it up and compare it to other agencies or professionals you're considering, it is likely that our fees are actually still going to be lower. And I have had plenty of families come to me saying, I can't afford adoption with anybody else. I can only afford it with you because you have a sliding scale and we are both public school teachers, right? Or something like that. Um, we are trying to make it possible for pregnant folks to have real options of families. We do have a needed family sliding scale to ensure that our fee structure does not make it impossible for families to adopt through Pact. We have our needed families. And this is only applicable for those whose income is below 100K and who fit the profile of needed or in-demand parents to adopt the children we place. Right now, that is two-parent Black families, two-parent Latinx families, two-parent Asian families, probably even a single Black parent just here in the Bay, a single parent of color here in the Bay. I need Bay Area families. If you make 150 and you live in the Bay, this doesn't apply to you. If you make 95K and you live in the Bay, after we confirm all financial status, then this could apply to you. This is not guaranteed until we have confirmed where you fall on the scale. For those of you out of my area and just in my placement program, this is a breakdown of the fees that you can expect. Our pre-placement consultation is $400 for families of color. That's where you all start. You do not have to do the BCAC. Then if you become a client or an active waiting family in our program, that's the sliding scale, and the case management fees range from 1,000 to 11,000. My current range of Pact families is the like 5,200 to 8,500 for full case management fee. You're going to have your home study agency. It's not me. And that can range from, I probably should put 1,500, but maybe 1,500 to 3,500, depending on your agency. Most other agencies do post-placement visits in a range of 500 to 700 per visit. You will see that PACS is a little bigger. That covers post-placement visits, any other additional visits required, and the compilation and completion of your paperwork that goes to the court and finalization. Some agencies will have a court finalization paperwork fee. Ours is wrapped into post-placement. And then ICPC, if applicable, can range anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000. So if you're in Idaho, I'm just going to keep using Idaho. If you're in Idaho, their ICPC charge may be 3,300. And like just point blank, right? We have our sliding scale. Some of my families will pay 600, some will pay 2,200, but ICPC is going to go by whatever your state's fee is. This is the harder part for families outside of my area. If, if you do not live in the Bay Area and you're like, I really would like to adopt through Pact, how do I get my profile out there? If you also have an additional $35,000 over what you pay to Pact and your agency, that will help. I hate to say that. Bottom line, adoption is an industry. This number is coming from another agency that calls me. You're in Ohio. I'm in Oakland. An agency in Texas calls me and says, hey, my parent likes the family in Ohio, or Idaho, whatever I said. I'm going to go back to Idaho. My family likes the parent in Idaho. We are an agency in Texas. Our fees are $20,000, non-negotiable. Is your family open to that? If you can financially afford that, you can say, yes, I can give 20K to that Texas agency. I can give my 1,100 or 1,300 or 11,000 or 13,000 to Pact, and I can pay my local agency to do my post-placement visits. 20 plus, I'm going to say 10 through Pact or maybe 8 through Pact, 18, 20. So that's 28,000 English major, not math major. And then your post-placement visit, right? Like it adds up. So if you do not live within my area, a way for your profile to get out there a little bit more is when other agencies come asking for my families. Those agencies will range 10 to 40 to, I know a family who paid $75,000 2.5 years ago, maybe three now, for a single birth adoption placement. Um, I that's disgusting. I can't control it, but unfortunately, if you're not in my area, having a higher budget is going to help with getting your profile out there more. It's all here on the screen. Expectant or birth parent agency can range from 10 to 40 plus. You have to think about travel, especially if you're in Idaho and you're trying to get to Texas. Any expectant or birth parent expenses. At Pact, we have the 3K that we just kind of set. We'll ask you if there's potentially more. I know families who paid $22,000 in birth parent expenses. Um, yeah. And then lawyer for termination of parental rights or TPR or finalization can range. I've seen 2,300, I've seen 5,000, I've seen 8,000. Also circling back to so many children need homes. That's the foster care program where you're not going to see numbers like this. They actually give stipends, they give monthly things. That's a whole nother thing that you'll likely hear as you gain education. Why can you not give that money back to the family of origin for family preservation? I don't know. Some agencies are trying to work on that, but in foster care, you're not going to see numbers like this. We are basically at our time. If you need to scoot off, please do. And I'm going to wrap up, and this is recorded if you do need to scoot off and you missed the last few pieces. Things to consider. What is bringing you to adoption at this time? Have you grieved and processed any fertility issues, any loss issues, any my partner and I were going to adopt and then we split and now I'm solo, so I'm just running into this immediately because I'm getting older. Have you really grieved and processed things that are bringing you to this process? Your child is going to feel it. I have worked with way too many adults who were like, oh, yeah, my parents did not fully process their fertility. And I felt it as a result. Not me, but other adoptees that I know. Are you ready to commit emotionally, physically, and financially to being a parent and being an adoptive parent? I also should say, are you ready to have a baby for only 365, 363 days? So many people are like, oh, we want a baby, we want a baby, we want a baby. Uh, if they're placed at birth, you have 365 days with a baby, and then they are growing up. So are you ready? Your life changes immediately with adoption. You don't have the pregnancy period. You could go active and get a call 2 weeks later. I've had that happen. You can go active and get a call 3 years later. Are you ready to commit emotionally, physically, and financially to being a parent and being an adoptive parent? Adoption is not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It is not linear. It is XL, hashtag poop emoji, Texas $, flatline, resuscitate. Can you be flexible? Can you move quickly? Can you also sit and wait? Can you let go of control? You cannot control this process. Your child comes first. This is not about you anymore. And will you be okay if you can't or do not adopt? Will you be okay if this does not bring the end result that you were thinking of? Moving forward, we invite you to envision yourselves as parents. Imagine that your child is watching the choices you are making in this process from start to finish. Imagine them as an adult and how they might feel about your choices down the road. I like to tell people they're sitting on your shoulder watching all of this, and all of this is part of their story. They're going to come around and ask you, trust me. Can I see your home study? Can I see your profile book? What sort of questions were you asked? How did you do this? Did you go to therapy? Did you address your infertility? All of this is how they joined your family. All of this is their story. Are you ready to openly and honestly tell them this is how we navigated? I have families now who tell me, oh no, I'm embarrassed. I know mine was unethical. I know mine was shady. I paid $26,000 to some lawyer, and I don't think my kid's birth parent got any support. I was involved in that. And when they're old enough, I'm going to tell them that it doesn't feel great. And now that parent is doing reform work and education work and advocacy work because they admit of how they engaged in the process before getting more education. Becoming a parent is about you. Being a parent is about your child. The journey is just beginning. And if our placement program does not feel like the right fit for you, you can still access our education, support, and community, no matter who you adopt through. Like I said, families that come to our camp, maybe 2% adopted through Pact. Everybody else was foster to adopt, a different private agency, or maybe international adoption. But you do not have to adopt through us to access everything we offer. I'm going to go through this real quick because I know we are over time. These are just some examples and snippets of the Dear Expectant Parent or Parents letter. Notice that we don't say Dear Birth Mother or Birth Parents. Nobody is a birth parent until they sign paperwork. And a child is half of their birth mother, half of their birth father. And we're trying not to exclude him or them from the experience. You can also go on my website. My family's profiles are on there. You can go on any adoption agency website and see family profiles to get an example, get a sense of what we're looking for, what expectant parents are looking for. And we have a webinar that we give to you when you get to this step. And we help you go through it, do some drafts, guide you through the process. I mentioned it. If you do move forward or you want to get a head start, our required reading is on the screen. Both of these are available on audio or Audible. You can read together. If you're a two-parent family, you can read together, but then you'll be doing separate reports for all of our education. We require written reports to be turned in. Any last questions? We are at time. I know we are over. Um, how often do we work with outside agencies? Not that often at all, actually. In the last 4 years, maybe 3, and we've done maybe like 15 placements in the last 4 years. 7, none, 4. Yeah, we've done about 12 to 15 placements in the last 4 years, and maybe 3 of them were outside agencies. A lot of what we do is here. If you are a family that does not live in the Bay Area, you are looking at a longer wait time. Pregnant people are like, I want to see my kid, right? I don't want my kid in Idaho. I'm in San Francisco. I want my kid in Sacramento, right? Far enough, but close enough. So we actually don't work with too many outside agencies. Um, I've been here for 11 years, and that's kind of been, they call us every now and then, but it's not that common or that frequent. We have had on our end, in the last 7 years or so, we did not have the families that a pregnant person was looking for, unfortunately. So then we have had to go to other agencies. But other agencies coming to us has not been that common. Single parents. I say the national average for anybody is 2 to 4 years. I would definitely tell single parents to plan of like, okay, I'm looking at 2 to 4 years, and it could be longer. It could be 4 to 6, 4 to 7. I also have no idea. If I will also say this. If somebody calls me and says, and I don't know where you live, I'm just going to say you live in Oakland, right? Let's say somebody calls me and says, I want a two-parent Black family that lives in the Bay Area. And um, I will say, hey, okay, yeah, I'll say I have a Black single parent who lives in the Bay Area. I know you're looking for two parents, but here is somebody else who matches what you are looking for. We will do that. We've done that before. And I've had people tell me I don't want a queer family, and then they end up choosing a queer family after they look through profiles and like think about it. So that goes for anybody, right? Let's say somebody's like, I want a two-parent Black family that's in the Bay Area. I will show them that. Then I will show them here's a single Black family, Black parent, single parent family in the Bay Area who is Black. And I might say, yeah, and I know you weren't interested in out of area, but here are a few more because that's real options. We're giving them real options. Are they likely to pass on the out of area? Yes, but they might consider the single parent more because you are local. So I might like, please don't quote me on this, but a local single parent might not wait as long because most of our placements are local. Um, but historically, single parents just wait long across the board. Within private infant placement and with my program, definitely check with other organizations to ask. Within foster care, you, my very good friend went into the foster care system as a single parent. They got a call about a potential placement before their foster license agency got sent to their house. Like they have a document that they had to put up in their house. They got a call about an infant before that certificate even came. They had three infants go through their home that went through the reunification process. And then on the fourth, they adopted as a single parent within the foster care system. Um, so that's the other thing. I tell people foster care, you could have a placement immediately before you can even blink. And you're going to wait 2 to 3 years to find out what their concurrent planning is. The goal is reunification, right? Like there's that process. Within this process, you could wait 4 years, but when you get placement of an infant, it's a higher possibility that that placement's going to move forward. Birth parents, when they sign their paperwork and become an official birth parent, they're signing that paperwork anywhere from like 3 days to 1 to 3 weeks after birth. So you wait 4 years, but then you get a placement and the parent signs within a shorter amount of term. Foster care, you get a placement immediately, but the road to permanency and adoption is a lot longer. Any other questions? You can I am the Pact Adoption Social Worker. My email is just my first name at pactadopt.org. Any other follow-up questions that you have, you can definitely send my way. If you're like, oh no, we're ready to go, we want to do a pre-placement consultation, do send that stuff to me. I get you connected. All of my consultants are currently Black women. Two are adoptive parents. One is an adoptee. One of them adopted through Pact. Their kid is now, gosh, I don't even want to say it, like 19 or 20 years old. That's crazy. The other adoptive parent did not adopt through Pact, but they are an adoptive parent. And then the other one is a Black same race adoptee. So my consultants on my team are also individuals who have gone through this process or lived this process. If there are no final questions, I'm going to wrap up. My email is in the chat. Our website stays current and up to date. Our event tab, we have support calls every month. Our APCC group is open to families considering adoption. So if you're a Black parent, Latinx, Asian parent of color, and you're like, oh, I've got some questions, I'd like to talk to others, you are welcome to hop on to APCC. They have a private Facebook group. You can connect with our director, Raquel. You don't have to like be with us officially. There are tons of people in APCC that didn't work with us at all and just found us on their own because there's not a lot of support out there for adoptive families of color. And if that is it, I am going to stop my share.
Thank you. Thank you so
You
much.
are very welcome and have a good evening.